Right, it's me. I'm back, and I'm in the school book room. I'm back with Resist 35 Profiles of Ordinary People Who Rose Up Against Tyranny and Injustice. And today we are in the early 1900s, and we are going to discuss a man named Emiliano Zapata. Emiliano Zapata. I think he wins for great name. Zapata. That's a great name. He said, "I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees." Tough guy, right? Tough guy. I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. When Emiliano Zapata was just 17 years old, his parents died, leaving him an orphan. He found a family in the people of his village, in Encilio, Mexico. He would live with them and fight for them his whole life long. He could have focused just on himself. Emiliano Zapata knew more than how to farm the land. He was also a skilled horseman who earned money at rodeos, who did bullfighting from horseback. He could have taken those skills, made a living, and not bothered with anyone else. But when Porfirio Diaz, the newly elected president of Mexico, began taking land from the peasants, Emiliano and his band of rebels began to fight back. So similar to what the United States government did to indigenous people, the Native Americans. They just took the land. So we have a new president of Mexico in the early 1900s, and he's just taking land from poor peasants. But Emiliano is not having it. He and a lot of people wanted to fight back. Under the president's rule, wealthy plantation owners and foreign investors were able, like people from other countries with money, were able to take huge plots of land called haciendas, and rural farmers called campesinos were displaced and thrust even further into poverty. So if you're already a poor peasant farmer and your land is taken away, now you're even in worse shape than you were before. The wealthy elite were ruthless in their quest to take the farmers' land. Once, in response to the farm workers' protests, the landowners set fire to an entire village. Emiliano kept protesting because he believed that land was life. When families could own a piece of land, they could feed their children, be productive members of their community, and make a path for the next generation, right? With your land, you can grow food, you can build a home, you can use the resources on that land, the water, the indigenous plants that grow there. He believed that when the land was grabbed and poor farmers became tenants, which is not much higher up than a slave, always in debt and never able to get ahead, the balance of society was thrown off, often permanently. In other words, the wealthy are just going to keep getting wealthier, and the peasants are just going to keep getting poorer. So the divide is just going to get bigger. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. This was a huge problem in Mexico. Emiliano was clever, and sometimes he was able to use his research skills to find the ancient title deeds that prove the true ownership of the land. He would take those deeds to the local governors and implore them to do the right thing. But the governors were beholden to the corrupt government, and they were slow to act. Sometimes, even after Emiliano had presented the case with all the proof in the world, they still would not help the poor campesinos. Emiliano grew impatient with petitioning the government and began to resist. He took the land away from the plantation owners, redistributing it to the people he believed had been wrong. In 1910, President Diaz ran for office against a man named Francisco Madero. Emiliano met with Madero. The two men did not agree about everything, but Madero promised to help the poor people in the rural areas get back the land that was being stolen from them. To help Madero's campaign, the men who followed Emiliano united as an army. They were called Zapatistas, named after Emiliano. Zapatistas. Emiliano had a new title. He was now officially the general of the Liberation Army of the South. The general of the Liberation Army of the Liberation Army of the South. I'm going to get that one more time. He was the general of the Liberation Army of the South. Emiliano and his army were a crucial force in defeating President Diaz in a hard-fought revolution. Francisco Madero became the next president of Mexico, but once he was in office, he began to go back on his promises to the people. Madero tried to buy Emilio's loyalty by offering him great sums of money to buy a hacienda of his own. Emiliano refused. His loyalty was to the campesinos, the farmers, the poor, hardworking people of the village. Madero installed a governor who would support the wealthy plantation owners. But Emiliano was not done fighting. He came up with a plan which stated that Madero was not fit to be president because he did not uphold the ideals of the people who had fought so hard to bring him into office. Under the plan, Emiliano and the Zapatistas would continue the Mexican Revolution until two democratic terms were met. 1. A provisional president would be installed until fair elections could be held. And 2. The provisional government would agree to return at least 1/3 of the land that had been stolen from the poor. Emilio's battle cry for the plan was called Land and Liberty. The people of Mexico saw Emiliano in two very different ways. To the rich, he was a bandit, robbing them of the expansion they saw as their right. To the poor, he was a hero, a modern-day Robin Hood who helped them retrieve what was rightfully theirs. But when he cried out, land and liberty, he didn't mean just his land and just his liberty. He could have saved himself, but that never crossed his mind. He could have been fine on his own, but he decided to use his voice and use his purpose in life to fight for other people that were in the same circumstance or in less of a circumstance than he was. And I think that's what makes him a really great person to know. He said, we must speak for the voiceless. So in your journal today, I want you to think about who is voiceless today. Who doesn't have a voice in our world? Make a list. Maybe the list is long, maybe it's short. Who doesn't have a voice? Who cannot speak up for themselves, or if they speak up for themselves, no one really pays attention to them? Think of who those people are. Maybe write a little bit about that. A list is fine. Who is voiceless in our society today? All right, interesting. We went to Mexico. The next one, the next guy is from Germany. So I'll be reading about him next time. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.